Welcome to Anti-Fiction. This is a weekly nonfiction podcast where each week I, Christian Yates, select a topic and then I con two of my friends into talking about the topic. My guest hosts this week are Dee Burdine.
Welcome, all of you who are listening or will be listening.
And Lindsey Morris. First time on the show. Thanks for being here. So our topic today is ghosts. And I'm very excited because this is the last episode of Ghosts. And we can all finally sleep again at night. We'll get back into, normal topics like assassinations and serial killers and shit. So it'll be great. So I picked the Tower of London for my story, right?
That's a good one.
So I knew that it was haunted. I did not realize how fucking haunted the Tower of London is. But yeah, this is gonna be a long one, so buckle up. There's like a million ghosts, so we're just gonna run through all of the million ghosts real quick. So the Tower of London, originally it was built by William the Conqueror in 1078. So it's like 900-year history. So we're just gonna run through the last 900 years real quick. It's been associated with death and torture basically ever since, even though only a total of 7 people were ever actually executed there. 3 of them were queens of England, all of whom reportedly haunt the tower. Though it has housed thousands of prisoners over the years, so most of those prisoners also haunt the Tower of London. It's a happening place in the ghost community. So the first ghost sighting at the tower was that of St. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was murdered in 1170. His ghost was first spotted in 1241 when King Henry III had commissioned an inner circle wall to be built at the tower, which apparently Becket was not happy about for some reason. Probably because King Henry III was the grandson of the king who was said to be responsible for Becket's murder. That could have had something to do with it. So the ghost of Thomas Becket appeared twice at the site of construction, and on both occasions, he touched the newly built wall with his cross, and the wall crumbled. King Henry III then stopped building the wall, and instead he built a chapel, which he named after Thomas Becket, and then the ghost was never seen again. So that was the first time any ghost had ever been seen there, and I guess nobody's seen St. Thomas Becket since then, so that's nice.
He was appeased.
Yeah, he was happy about it. Mm-hmm. But that was not the last ghost that was ever sighted there.
Of course not.
In 1610, Lady Arbella Stewart married Lord Beauchamp William Seymour, and the marriage was seen as a threat because it did not have the permission of the king. So Arbella was placed on house arrest, and William was sent to the tower. But Arbella plotted to get William released so they could escape together to France. William eventually made it to freedom, but Arbella was caught and sent to the tower, where she stayed until she died in 1615. Her very bitter ghost now wanders throughout the Queen's house on the Tower Green, and residents have experienced physical assaults such as pushing and strangling, heard voices, and claim to see apparitions. So don't piss off somebody and then kill them, or
separate them from their love.
Yes. Although, listen, I did read though that he remarried 6 months later.
Oh,
shallow,
right? Shallow. That's
right.
why she
so
was
that's
pissed.
probably why she's pissed.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about being put on house arrest and murdered.
No,
it was like
the word got back to her, and she went, "Oh, I'm gonna
He
screw
did
these
what?
people over from now until forever."
So one of the most frequently cited ghosts in the Tower of London is the ghost of Queen Anne Boleyn. Mm-hmm. She has been seen basically for always since she was beheaded in 1536, ever since. In 1817, a sentry patrolling the White Tower suffered a fatal heart attack after encountering a ghostly Anne Boleyn on a staircase. In 1864, a sentry standing guard outside of the Queen's house reported seeing the white figure of a woman veiled in a mist. She was wearing a Tudor dress and a French hood. However, where her face should have been, there was nothing. He challenged the figure, and when it did not reply, he continued toward it. The sentry made a thrust at it with his bayonet, and it passed right through the figure, and a fiery flash ran up his rifle and gave him a shock, and then he passed the fuck out. And then he was court-martialed for falling asleep on his watch. But he was found...
It wasn't my fault.
Right. He was found not guilty when several eyewitnesses told the court that they had also seen a headless woman on Tower Green that night. One officer who saw the event from a window in the Bloody Tower testified that he had heard the sentry yelling at the figure to stop and then saw him thrusting his bayonet through it, and then he saw the figure pass through the bayonet and the sentry as well. Another story of the Tower of London relates to a sighting at the Chapel Royal. A light was flickering inside late one night whilst trying to figure out where the source was, the captain of the guard climbed a ladder to see inside, and he was met with a procession of ladies and knights in centuries-old dress parading through the chapel, led by Anne Boleyn. He recognized her apparently after seeing her in paintings. So the ghost of Anne Boleyn is also said to be seen walking through the church near the tower, down the aisle of the church toward her grave underneath the altar. Several people have reported seeing her headless body walking the tower's corridors. That's another interesting thing, is that she's, a lot of the time when the apparition is seen, she's like carrying her head. Right?
Oh, sweet.
creepy.
Right, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you were a ghost. You can just fix that shit
Just put it right back on.
real easy. It's
She
like,
wants to make a point out of
right,
it.
yeah,
but, like,
she's like, look what they did.
right. These horrible people.
Oh, Lord.
I guess. Another Queen of England that was that haunts the tower was Catherine Howard, who married King Henry VIII in 1540. She was a handmaid to his previous wife, and but he didn't. It was an arranged marriage, the previous one, so he had it annulled, and then 3 weeks later he married Catherine Howard. But soon, King Henry VIII found out that she had led an illicit sexual life, so he executed her former lovers and then sent her to the tower in 1542, and she was executed 3 days later at age 18.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep. Her ghost can still be seen running along what is now called the Haunted Gallery. Two young princes. I'm going to preface this is the most heartbreaking one.
I think I've heard this story.
The
Yes.
princes in the tower.
Yes.
Yeah. So there were two young princes named. So it was Edward V and Richard, and they were 12 and 9 when their father Edward IV died in 1483. Ahead of Edward V's coronation at age fucking 12, their uncle and guardian Richard III locked them in the tower. And then Richard III assumed the throne, and the boys disappeared.
Never seen again.
Never seen again.
So sad.
Right?
Aw.
It was assumed that they were murdered by order of their uncle. In 1674, two skeletons, believed to be the children, were unearthed beneath a staircase in the White Tower. They were in a little box, and they found the box, and there were two skeletons inside. And I read something, I didn't
Yeah.
write it down, but I read something in 1993 when they went back and tested the skeletons again. They're still not able to determine who they belong to, obviously, because that technology doesn't exist yet. But the bones belonged to a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, which is what they determined. So probably it was them.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It is.
But the ghosts of the children are often seen wearing nightgowns, clutching each other in terror in the rooms of the castle, and they can be heard throughout the tower. Also heard throughout the tower are the shrieks of Guy Fawkes, who was tortured in the tower following the 1605 gunpowder treason plot. He tried to blow up Parliament. They tortured him for information, and now you can still hear him screaming in agony. That's a fucked up story in and of itself, by the way. The gunpowder treason plot. I don't know how I'm going to work that into an episode, but eventually I'm going to figure out what topic that story applies to.
Plans gone wrong.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't even. I guess technically it was
Plot's gone
assassination
wrong.
attempt.
Yeah.
You know, I could do it
Oh,
for the
you could.
assassinations episode.
Sure.
I guess. I already have a fucked up story for that one though.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's fucking crazy.
Well, that's why there's more than one episode. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But anyway, that story's fucked up anyway, and so you can still hear. I don't. Apparently, none of his compatriots are heard screaming throughout the tower. It's specifically Guy Fawkes. I don't know how you can tell, because I feel like with the specific torture that was inflicted upon them, I feel like the screams would be very similar. So.
I'm Guy Fawkes.
Yeah.
So
Take him first.
So Sir Walter Raleigh was beheaded in 1618 after having been imprisoned in the tower, and his ghost has been sighted several times by guards on duty in the Byward Tower, wandering around the rooms in the tower where he was incarcerated for several years. Witnesses at the Tower of London have also reported anonymous ghosts, so none that are specifically oh, that's Anne Boleyn or that's whoever. So these Tower of London ghosts are simply referred to as the Grey Lady and the White Lady, because that's the color of
The mist
the
or
apparition.
whatever.
Yeah, it's just what color they appear to be. But the ghost of the Grey Lady has been described as a woman in mourning garments and a black void where her face should be, which seems to be a common thing with ghosts around the Tower of London.
No pictures.
Right. I'm in mourning. A phantom squad of ghost soldiers has also been sighted marching in the grounds of the Tower of London. Tower of London guards have reported having a terrible crushing sensation upon entering the place where King Henry VIII's impressive suit of armor is exhibited. A guard who was patrolling the grounds reported a sensation of someone throwing a cloak over him, and when he tried to free himself, the cloth was seized from behind and pulled tightly around his throat by an unseen attacker. In 1817, the keeper of the crown jewels was having dinner with his family in their room in the Martin Tower when his wife suddenly cried out, and he turned to see a strange object resembling a glass tube containing what appeared to be an effervescing blue liquid floating in the air beyond the dining table. This strange cylindrical object then started floating around the room and came to hover behind his wife. She cried out that it was trying to grab her, so he threw a chair at the object. Right?
This is going to be bad.
Naturally,
Yeah.
they're at the dining table. What's the lightest thing that I can throw at something? Clearly a chair. And
At the object right behind my wife.
And this was in
Right.
1817, right? So, the chairs were not light.
No.
This wasn't no folding
It's not
chair.
from IKEA.
No,
No.
yeah. So he throws a chair at it, and the chair went straight through it without causing any damage, and then the spooky object faded, and it disappeared.
I thought you were going to say it hit his wife.
It picked up the chair and give him the chair. So the last one is I want to. This is my last Tower of London story, and I wanted to end it on kind of a goofier one.
Okay.
So the Tower of London used to be home to the Royal Menagerie, where the kings of England kept lions, leopards, monkeys, bears, etc., etc. There was an elephant there one time. Good times.
What?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's just a
Exotic
menagerie.
animals.
Yeah, they're kings. They do whatever they want.
Sure.
So in January of 1815, one of the guards saw a bear coming out of a doorway from the jewel room, and he thrust his bayonet at the huge animal and was astonished when the bayonet went straight through the phantom bear without hitting solid flesh or causing any damage. The guard was found later in a state of unconsciousness and was said to have died of fright less than 2 months later. Ghost bear! So that's, it wasn't a bear. Interestingly, the bear was not beheaded in the Tower of London, unlike most of the other ghosts.
Sounds like a very
kidding.
interesting place to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They
It's a-
give tours of it.
Yes, they do.
Really?
Yes, they
yeah,
do.
like it's
It's a
It's a-
huge tourist attraction.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
did not know that.
And they
So-
say it's pretty weird sometimes.
Mhm.
People see things and feel things, and doesn't even have to be at night.
Right.
That's insane.
Hell yeah.
I know.
Cool.
So that's my spooky Tower of London story.
Pretty grisly.
Because the last one was a bear.
Oh, I take it back.
I
take it back.
listen. I am. I think I'm so funny, and that's the only person I'm trying to please. So
Killing me
D, what?
Do you want me to go? Or do you
Yeah,
want
yeah.
Lindsay to
Go
You
for it.
Okie dokie.
I told Lindsay that she could go last, so that way.
All right. Well, once again, thank you for having me. And we are a week away from Halloween.
Yes.
So some weird stuff has just been happening all over the place. We just had a full moon like Friday night.
Right.
So, and now it's dreary and cold. So what better way to share the afternoon than to tell ghost stories?
Mm-hmm.
So mine is close to home. I am talking about the ghost of the Ohio University area and the
Okay.
Athens area.
All right.
And if anyone's from Ohio, they probably heard a lot of these stories.
I feel like Ohio has so many ghost stories.
They do.
Like just an inordinate amount.
We're
well,
supposed to have the most haunted houses too.
Are we?
Yeah.
Yes, real haunted
Yeah.
houses. Yeah.
More
Know how
more
terrible
ghosts
Ohio
than
is.
people in the state of
Exactly.
Ohio.
Exactly. But anyway, the Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, is perhaps the most haunted campus in the world. It was established in 1804, and it was actually the second institution of superior studies west of the Appalachian Mountains. It was reported that it was the first, but it really wasn't. It was the second, and I cannot remember the university that was the first one. But anyway, the number of allegedly haunted places on the site is quite impressive. In fact, Ohio University was featured in a series called The Scariest Places on Earth on television, if you've ever seen it. Oh, no, not much at all. Anyway, there are so many places around Athens. There's the Ridges, which is also part of the university. There's all these different cemeteries. In fact, there's over 60 cemeteries in that immediate area.
Jesus.
That's a lot.
It is a lot of, but you have
That's excessive.
well,
Yeah.
the
They
Ridges,
start cremating.
Well, the
Jesus
Ridges,
Christ.
when the Ridges was formed or built, it was an insane asylum, and it was actually one of the most progressive insane asylums that had ever been built, and humane treatment, and all this stuff. But as more and more people were admitted to it, then the conditions went downhill and atrocious things happened there, but lots and lots of people died there. So they think that that's part of the reason. But anyway, the one that I'm going to speak about today is Wilson Hall, and it is the most famous haunted place on the campus.
Okay.
The building is one that most people point to when speaking about haunted Athens, Ohio. This building is located smack dab in the middle of an immense pentagram
What?
consisting of 5 cemeteries
Okay.
situated around the area. The graveyards are scattered around the area, and when looked at on a map, they form a pentagram.
Interesting.
Now,
With the campus then like right in the center.
Wilson Hall right in the center.
Or Wilson Hall right in the center of
Correct. Now, a lot of skeptics say you can take any 5 points on a map and make a pentagram out of it, which you can.
Right.
But because of the proximity of all the cemeteries, you can do that, and you're not going to get that exact building in the middle of it. So that's very interesting. Now, pentagrams always have been given a very negative, connotation today, thinking, among many people, devil worship, dark forces, evil, etc. But in the old tradition, it is a symbol of power and magic. It is a pentagram might create a safe area free from paranormal activity. This is not the case.
It accidentally did the opposite.
Yeah.
They did the incantation backwards.
Yeah,
and-
it's not necessarily evil, but it is truly haunted. The center of the pentagram is extremely important, so it's no wonder that Wilson Hall resides in the middle of the cemetery pentagram. Okay, let me turn my page. Some experts say that I already did that one. Wilson Hall is said to be home to a ghost that died in a mysterious way in the 1970s. He died in room 428, and years after that, students residing in that room have heard strange sounds, footsteps, as well as witnessing objects moving by themselves on their own.
Okay.
Since these occurrences, the room has been closed off and has not been given to any students again. It is sealed and closed, and the school proclaims it is uninhabitable. It is
But not because of ghosts.
Well-
There's black mold in there.
No. Actually, there was, after the first incident in the early 70s, there was a girl who evidently practiced magical things, kind of the occult. and
In the middle of a pentagram?
in
That's
the-
just going to amplify things.
Yes, in the middle of Wilson Hall in room 428. Okay. She was said to have been even doing some, dark magic kind of things. Well, she
fantastic. Well, it's her fault.
She committed suicide.
Oh, God.
that
Okay,
room.
I retract my earlier joke.
Yeah, and it wasn't a pretty suicide. But
Right.
anyway, that's when it really amped up the energy in room 428. So they did totally seal it off, and it has never been given to another student since. It is also reported that Wilson Hall was built on the grounds of Indian territory, an Indian cemetery.
Naturally.
Yes. Spiritualists
Wouldn't be a ghost story without it.
And
all of
exactly.
Ohio.
Well, because there were lots of Indians, and in the areas there were lots of Indian grounds and stuff. Spiritualists agree that the geography of the area, with the peaks and the mountains and the valleys, make this area specifically conducive to psychic energy. So I found quite a few stories, but I picked just a few. This is in 2015. A student reported that her door randomly opened and closed even though it was locked tight. She heard footsteps above her room, but there is no floor above her room. And
Interesting.
that is a very
That was
common
something.
occurrence and reported instance of some kind of paranormal activity. They also talk about just feelings of dread and feelings of just all sorts of
Besides being in
besides.
college.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, besides being
The
in college.
normal
Do I have enough
college.
stress? No, let's see.
Why don't we add ghosts to the
Yes,
midterms? Why not?
Yes. In March of 2014, a young lady reported that her fire alarm kept going off, but it was making noises that fire alarms don't make.
What was it go? Ooh.
No, it was just weird noises. I know, yeah. Ooh, I'm a fire alarm. Ooh. Anyway.
The fire alarm is
Yes,
possessed by
yes.
the ghost of that guy that died in
Probably,
428.
probably. The doors slam shut for no reason and giggling when no one's around.
Oh, good. Oh, disembodied giggling.
Yes, yes.
That's what you want.
And she'd go out into the hallway because, sometimes you think, oh, well, I've got a roommate coming in or somebody down the hall, but
Right.
nobody's in the hallways. Up and down the hallways, you can
Right.
hear all that stuff. That was in 2014. Another one in 2014 woke up out of a dead sleep with lights coming on and blinds opening on their own, and she immediately left. She was so scared, called her parents and said, I'm not going back in there. The university, of course, tries to downplay a lot of this.
Well, yeah, it's bad press if you're
It
like,
is.
we're haunted.
It is. And a lot of people don't experience anything in the same floor as like room 428, but you
Right.
cannot even find room 428 anymore. They have sealed it over. It is now, if I'm not mistaken, it's a boiler room. And you
That seems like an unsafe place to put the boiler room is
Yeah.
where a bunch of ghosts.
It's behind a door that does not have a number on it, but if you go down the hallway and you see the numbers across from where the odd number would
They
be,
could just
that's
renumber everything.
yeah, but they didn't want to put anybody else in there
Oh, okay.
because bad things
didn't want
happened in
them
that
to
room.
think.
Bad
Yeah.
that people
Right, I
couldn't stay there.
I don't know that the bad energy is surrounding the number 428
Yeah.
specifically.
I think it's
Oh,
what
we're just gonna
happened
call it
inside.
426
Yeah.
now. It's gonna be fine.
I think it just has something to do with what happened in that room. But anyway, so there's lots and lots of those kind of stories. Now, a lot of the kids who go there say, no, it's all baloney. And, we found the room and it's just got some dead birds in
Until
it
you
and
double
everything.
dog
and
dare him to spend the night in room 428.
Exactly. In the boiler room, on the floor. I don't think so. But so that's just one of the big areas of Athens. But like I said, there are so many places. They give haunted tours all the time over in Athens. There's so many different places to go. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of a, I guess something to not necessarily be proud of, but something to brag about.
Right.
Oh, I go to Athens. I go to Ohio University, the most haunted campus in the entire world.
Right. The haunted
Yeah.
Ohio University.
Exactly. Not the Ohio. Yes. But anyway, so that's my story. I was hoping Kylie would be here because she goes there now.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's true.
And she goes,
Gotcha.
"Oh, I can hardly wait to hear about it." And I
Right.
said, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Sorry.
and she can hear all about it on
the podcast.
October
She
31st when she's listening.
So Kylie, this was for you.
Well, that was awesome.
Pretty fun stuff.
Well, yeah, it's always fun when we're talking,
Close
dark
to home.
energy and
Yeah.
shit, swirling around a place with a bunch of
Just shelter
18-year-old
yourself.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not enough that they have enough problems of their
Right.
own. Let's just throw in a pentagram and some really dark
right.
energy.
They're like, I'm 500 miles from home, and
Yeah, Mommy.
and midterms are killing me, and also I don't have enough money for books, and then also demons.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. My blinds keep opening up and I'm not doing anything, Dad. What am I supposed to do?
It's probably just a screw loose. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll be
come up
down
and
next
fix it,
weekend with
yeah.
the Phillips. Yeah. Hey, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Lindsay, what have you got for us today?
Okay, so in Connecticut, Easton, Connecticut, I think that's how you say it. There's a cemetery called Union Cemetery.
Okay.
Apparently, a white lady is their most famous ghost or
Apparition.
apparition.
Yeah,
That's how you
ghost,
say it? Okay.
apparition. Yeah.
Okay.
Spirit.
She's been cited
Phantom.
by numerous people. Even the police and firemen have seen her.
Huh.
And she's appeared in many photographs. They've had a lot of paranormal investigators that have caught her on film. She's normally sighted along Route 59 and sometimes Route 111. And I guess her thing is to jump out in front of cars and try to get them to wreck. Apparently,
You can't hurt me, but hey.
right. I guess one car was she did hit her, and there was actually a dent in the car.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, vehicle.
Well, if she
was
wasn't a
dented.
ghost, she is now.
And 1993.
Oh my.
Yeah. So the white lady was a murder victim who died in the 1940s. And she's a mourning mother that's looking for her daughter. So she's,
Oh.
yeah, I know. It's pretty sad.
I feel like
She's
there are better
probably
ways
a
to
little
accomplish that than to running out into traffic, though.
Maybe
Making
she's
somebody
just,
else crash.
Maybe,
Right.
Maybe she's
mad.
looking for her daughter
Exactly.
in
Well,
one of those cars.
That's fair, I guess.
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
You
maybe.
never
I
know.
don't know.
I don't know.
I'm always for the underghost,
All right, so it's jumping around on me. All right, so yes, she was killed by her husband. Others think her body may have been dumped into a sinkhole behind the church.
Oh.
Others believe it's the body of a woman who died during childbirth and is still searching for her lost child. So I'm guessing that's where that came from.
Yeah.
This is a sad
Yeah.
fucking
I
ghost
know,
story.
right?
Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
There's just a lot of things going on here. Yeah, that's all I'm finding about that.
And this is still
yeah,
going
so
on
that's,
today.
That's all I'm finding. Yeah. The people that wrote this one said that they went in 2000. They brought a camera with film. They snapped a couple pictures. You couldn't really see, but you saw hands reaching. Or wait, it says, nope, they didn't witness anything. So
Okay. Darn,
No,
I was
they didn't
ready
see-
for it.
I know.
Right.
I thought I saw something, but no, they didn't see anything.
Make
so
something up.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
All of our films
Hands
turned out
reaching,
underdeveloped, but we definitely saw
Right.
something.
Yeah, no, they didn't see anything. So, yep, just
There are so many ghost stories around the United States and all over the world, but it's just sad to me that
a
so
lot
many of these
them are very
people
sad.
have died in such tragic
Right.
ways. I
For
mean,
sure.
murdered or, in an accident or
Like
horrible
during
disease.
childbirth, too,
Yes.
that was-
Oh, gosh.
And like when they do like see them, it's like
Yeah.
the things that they do, like searching for their lost child. That
Yeah.
yeah, it's sad.
And it's probably
sad.
over and over, and it's the same thing over and over again,
Yeah,
like a loop.
Yeah.
probably. Like just reliving the last part of your
Yeah.
life.
Oh,
Sucks.
okay.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, now I'm depressed.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I guess that's like the end of the episode, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah.
On that
sorry.
lovely
It's-
note.
yeah, I know, right?
Hey, yeah.
Sad.
Well, now that we all know that that's what the afterlife is, and
It's not all like that.
I mean, you don't know.
Yes, I
Just
do.
kidding. I mean, do they
D has actually been a ghost this whole time.
all? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boo.
Hey, well,
I have seen a ghost.
thank you guys for being on the show.
Thank you.
This was spoopy, pretty spooky,
Grizzly.
grizzly,
Sad.
but and
we
sad.
hit all the, and funny.
Yeah.
We hit all the emotions.
I think as far as ghost content goes, we covered every kind of ghost story.
And for the last ghost episode,
Yeah, I like that.
I like that,
Releasing
too.
on Halloween.
Releasing on Halloween.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
hell yeah. Well, thanks guys for being on the show.
Yeah,
You're
you're
welcome.
Listeners, you can always follow us on the internet on Twitter and Instagram at antifictioncast. You can also email us any questions, comments, concerns, conspiracy theories, ghost stories, whatever you
We
want.
can use them later.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you got something that I don't, it saves me research.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can email us
send
too
your
at
ideas.
antifictioncast@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in for Spooktober. Tune in next week for less spooky stories, probably. I mean, unless somebody does like.
Well, you know me and my alien shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's some
that's
weird
true.
ones. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. Thanks and check us out next week. We'll see you then.
Happy Halloween.
Ooh.